Hey guys, Ryan at ZZP here. We're gonna do something a little bit special. You guys have been waiting for it. We've been excited to show you. We got our old Gen II Cruze here. We're gonna do a build series on it. We're starting that build series now off with our valve springs. You guys have been asking about it. We've been excited to show you and excited to release the product. We finally got it to the point where we're gonna release it. We're gonna show you how to install them, and we're gonna get right to it today. All right guys, we have valve spring tool that we're gonna use to remove the valve springs, hold the timing and everything. And we also have the valve springs that you're gonna need to replace your old valve springs with. So what we have in the kit here is obviously we got the valve springs and we have the tool itself. It's gonna come with a couple different things. So right here we got your tool for locking the injectors down, so when you pressurize the cylinder, it doesn't shoot the injectors out. We have your crank locking tool. We have your cam locking tool. Here's another part of your cam locking tool. Then we also have your valve spring remover tool. This is all that's going to come in your kit. Obviously, it is super simple, and we just designed this for this car. It will be on our website. Let's get started. A couple things we're gonna need today, just to start off quick and easy. You're gonna need a pick, and you're gonna need a 10 mil. If you haven't already lost it, find one. And you're gonna need a 7 mil or a flathead screwdriver. Either way works, but we're gonna start with taking this intake off, and we have a lot of connectors here that we're gonna have to get out of the way. We're gonna show you that process. And other than that, I mean, it's a really simple process to get everything off. There's just a lot of little things you got to get off. So we're going to start with something quick and easy. I'm going to do everything that I can on top to show you, especially if you're doing this in your yard. You don't need a lift. We're going to show you how to do it quick, easy way, get this done without going up and down too many times. So let's get started. A little 7 mil down here. We're gonna take this connector off. This just pulls out. This just has some push pins, just like that. Same process on these. There we go. There we go. Be very gentle with those lines. They do get brittle. They are pretty resilient, but there's your intake. Next thing we're gonna do is just start taking off all the connectors for the actual valve cover that are on here that you can see that are gonna be in the way. Just use a little pick. All I'm doing with this pick is just, there's little tabs in here. Sometimes these connectors, they've been on there for 100,000 miles or 200,000 miles. And they're a little stubborn. If you use a pick and just kind of help it come out of that connector. Some of them just pop off like that. Got your O2 sensor here. There we go. Boom. Get this out of the way. That's out of the way. Connector off here. Okay, so I can start taking the coils off here. Your car may look a little bit different just because we didn't have an engine cover on this. It is just one T30 to come out. I'm gonna take this plastic hose off for the turbo. Stick your pick in there, go in between these two little squares. There's a little tab. Give it some pressure, and pull. You're gonna need your 10 mil here. What I like to do, Remember where that goes, just like that. Take your coils off. Give these things a little pull. Boom. Next thing we can do is start getting these injectors out of here. We're gonna start by taking these bolts loose, taking this 17 millimeter loose right here. And these are technically one-time use fittings. At your discretion, you can replace them or reuse them. We're gonna start by taking that off. It's gonna be a little bit of fuel that comes out of there. What I like to do is just loosen it slowly. You can watch that fuel come out. Just like that. Press lock on this vacuum pump. And then these charge pipes are actually pretty simple. Basically a little pin in there. Get that one, and then there's another one way down here, same style. Usually just push that clip up and out of the way. Wiggle that charge pipe just so it's loose there. And then there's one 10 millimeter way down here around the corner. We're gonna take that loose. Just like that. Now your charge pipe's loose here. Give her a wiggle up at the throttle body. Just like that. Now you do have a coolant line right here. Pretty simple. If you push this and pull, it just comes right off. Now we got to take this coolant line up here, and it's going to spill a little bit of coolant, but not a whole ton. Try to pliers. Once you get the clamp out of the way, don't be yanking on this. You're gonna break it. You just give her a little twist. And a little twist up here. Now, comes right out of the way. Okay. So you got that coolant line out of the way. Should be able to move your charge pipe. Kind of twist her around. Just like this. It's that bottom clamp that was on there. You just pull these two tabs, and that's how it releases. Put it back, just like that. You can actually put those clamps right back in. Now that you got them off, you can put them right back to where they're supposed to be. They will clip right on, just like this. You don't gotta mess with them anymore. They'll clip right back into place. Well, we can take another 10 mil off right here. Take that off. And then down here, there is another 17 millimeter for the high pressure fuel pump. Knock that loose. There's gonna be a little bit of fuel that comes out of that end. Very careful to not do this when the car's hot, just so you don't start any fires, but there's your high pressure line. Put your 10 mil right back. Okay, now we're gonna start getting this fuel rail off. Take your little 10 mil. Bolts off here. Now you're gonna take an Allen and take off both of these little tiny bolts. You're gonna wanna disconnect all of your connectors as well with a pick. Could be a 4 millimeter Allen. You're gonna wanna do all this before you take your spark plugs out. That's why we're doing it right now. Just so none of your little bolts fall down the spark plug holes. Boom. Okay, so you don't wanna be yanking on these fuel rails too much. You'll bend these. You'll bend them or you could break them going down to the injectors. So you just wanna give it a little bit of pressure. A little bit of pressure in a couple places while you're pulling on it. So this fuel rail, they're just held in by O-rings. There they go. You just give it a little wiggle. And you're gonna wanna take all these O-rings. If yours got stuck in the rail, no big deal. They're reusable, and pretty resilient. So what you're gonna wanna do so you don't forget is you're gonna wanna throw these right back onto the fuel injector. Just like that, they just press on. Easy enough, you will get some fuel over by the injectors, no big deal. Move your fuel rail out of the way, you can leave these bolts just right in here. No big deal, move this out of the way. We're gonna disconnect this little connector back here that was hidden by our fuel rail. Then we're gonna start taking this coolant line off. This coolant line runs right over the valve cover. We're gonna have to take that off to get the valve cover off. Again, another 10 mil. Just like that. And this is a 16. It's actually gonna lose a bit of coolant here. I wanna put a bucket or something underneath it. Just a little banjo fitting. Just like that. Gonna lose some coolant. This is loose now. We're gonna wanna take this clamp off, that clamp off, and then this coolant pipe should come right out of there. Now if you have this cover right here, if you have a cover over this, it's just two little 10mm bolts. But we do not, so we can just slide it out. Two 10 mils, little nuts. This will slide right out of the way. Okay. You want to take your back pump off. 13mm here. There's one here, and one back here. So you can kind of move this coolant line out of the way. Give your vacuum pump a little wiggle. Just like that. You're gonna get a little oil out of that, seeping down from the valve cover. Now we can start working, taking our actual valve cover bolts off. You're just gonna work through here. There's just a bunch of little 10 mils. Definitely easier if you have an impact. Definitely don't need one. It makes the job a lot quicker. Just like that. I think what we're actually going to do here is take these two last connectors out just to get that harness right out of the way. Boom. There's a little ground right here. Like that. Put your bolt back in. Get this harness right up out of the way. Just like that. Take this 13 mil out as well. Another 13. Two of them, a hidden one. You don't technically have to take this bracket out, but it makes things a lot easier when you go to take the valve cover, put the valve cover back on. Cool. Valve cover bolts. They're all loose. Everything's out of your way. Super easy now. Take a little flathead screwdriver, or I got a mini pry bar. Works good for me. Pick your best spot and just literally sit here, pry up on the valve cover. It's going to be a little stuck, especially if you got 100,000 miles on it. Whatever you do, do not pull on the plastic parts. Give her a little pry over here. There we go. Little wiggle. Little angle. Oh. Just like that. You can leave all your bolts in it, just don't flip it upside down. Before you forget, so this, all this does is hold your injector down, so when you put air in the cylinder, your injector doesn't go pew and fly into your face or into the hood. Literally all it does is just bolt down. Those injectors are usually pressed in there pretty good. Shouldn't fly out, but that's just a little precautionary thing you want to do. So we're going to do that on each cylinder. We're going to work our way across the cylinder when we're doing the valve springs. We're going to keep switching that little plate over to the next injector. So what we can actually do now is take the #1 spark plug out right now. Do that last, obviously, so nothing falls in the hole. There's a kind of a really small spark plug, or actually a 14 millimeter. Should be able to get a regular socket in there. Just for a little 14 millimeter socket. You don't necessarily need a spark plug socket, but it definitely helps. Just like that. You're gonna wanna stick your air into the cylinder. You're not gonna put air to it yet. So this is gonna be an M12 actually. So not a regular M14 like a regular spark plug. It's a little bit smaller. So we don't forget, again, so we don't drop anything in there. We're not gonna stick air to it yet. We're gonna wanna lift the car up, whether you got a jack or whatever. Take the tire off, take your inner plastics out, super simple. I don't think we really need to show that. You got your cam lobes here, and you wanna get these cam lobes as flat as possible. So see how this one's almost perfectly flat, and this one's pointed down a little bit. Let's try to get those as flat as possible so it's easier when we go to put the cams back in, to slide them in. We're not wrestling with spring tension or anything. So you're gonna wanna turn the engine over before you put your timing tools in and make sure these are both flat, and then we'll start with that. We're gonna wanna lift the car up though. I'm gonna turn this crank over until those cams are flat, just like we were talking about. Okay. Once we get our cams in a good position, like I said, you want them flat, so it's easier to get everything in. Now if you look in here, you got your crank bolt, then you actually have your tensioner bolt right here. You're gonna wanna take that tensioner bolt out, and this will lock in just about like that. It's 12 point, and if you need to move the crank a little bit back and forth to get that bolt to line up, it is slotted. So to get that plug slash bolt to line up, and to get your 12 point down here lined up, if you need to move the crank a little bit, it's not gonna hurt anything. You're gonna wanna use a 5/16, which is actually a standard size. Now your car might look a little bit different. I took all the inner fender liner out, just easier for the video, easier for you guys to see. Okay, you can see your actual tensioner for the timing is in there, and when we get to it eventually, we're gonna show you how to release that, because when you put air in the cylinder, it's gonna wanna tighten up that tensioner, and we're gonna wanna release that when we get done so we're not stretching the chain. So it's definitely easier. Definitely easier to put the bolt in first, get it started, and then tighten it down. Okay, now your crank is officially locked. So that's our crank locking tool. Now I'll show you how to lock the cams. Everything is small on this car except for how you hold the cams. You can either use a crescent wrench to hold the actual cams, when you're loosening up the bolt, a lot of people are gonna have a crescent wrench. I am thankful enough to have this big old 32 mil, which gives me a lot of leverage. So I'm gonna use that. What you're gonna wanna do, there's two 15mm bolts on the end of these cam sprockets. You're just gonna wanna knock them loose. They are keyed. There's a little pin, a little keyway, so unlike the Gen 1 Cruze Sonic, you don't gotta worry about this slipping because it's keyed. So you're just gonna take that nut loose. Same thing with this side. While you're holding the cam, just like that. Don't forget to hold that cam. You do not want your timing to spin right now. It's a bad day. You don't want your timing to jump, but as long as you hold that cam, they give you a lot of meat to grab on there. This is where our timing tool comes in. So this is gonna actually hold the cam actuators in place. What you're gonna wanna do is take your 15mm bolts out on the end. They're pretty long. Boom, just like that, there's one. Take your two bolts out. This bolt is the 10mm bolt from your valve cover that goes right here. Take it out of your valve cover, and you're gonna use that for this tool. So this tool goes underneath here. It goes underneath your actuators. Slides right in right there. Now this tool is kind of a press fit deal. It actually slides up underneath the chain here. Or right next to the chain. There you go. And then as you can see, 10mm bolt, take that, tighten it down. Make sure your holder is pushed back all the way, as far as you can get it. Tighten up your 10 mil. Just like that. That's how you like your cams, your cranks, your crank sprocket. There is a fuel pump lobe right here, then here's your reluctor. So for your intake side, goes back here, exhaust side goes back here. You can see the top of the cam caps are labeled as well. Just for people, if you forget, this is how they go in. Take an 8mm socket, crack all these cam caps loose. Boom. Now, take the cams out. Give them a little wiggle, just a little amount of pull. Boom, just like that. See how there's a keyway on here, and there's a keyway on the cam sprocket. Just like that. Go through, take all your last adjusters out. Next thing we're gonna do is actually take our two-piece design spring tool. We got the spring, I don't know, what do you call this? We got a spring remover slash plunger, and then we got the actual spring tool that presses down on the retainer. What we're gonna do with this is we're gonna take your little plunger tool, go on top of the spring. We're gonna put this tool on loosely because we may need to move it a little bit. And all we're gonna do here is we wanna center up this tool to where that bolt's gonna press down center. And we're gonna tighten it down. We're pressurizing the cylinder, which holds the valve up, and now we can depress the spring without having any issues and without worrying about that valve falling down into the cylinder. What you're gonna do here, you're gonna take a 10 mil. Once you get this tool centered up, and you're gonna have a magnet, and there's two retainers. And you're just gonna tighten those bolts down until those retainers come loose, and you're able to access them with your magnet. Just like that. There's one. And there's the second one. Gonna remove or loosen your 10mm bolt here. Once you've done that, remove your little plunger. Now you have access to take the valve spring out. Now this is a good time to mention at this point, it is always good that you can do your valve seals right now as well at this point, but right now, since we're focused on valve springs, we're just going to replace our springs with our new set. We got our new valve springs here. Pretty simple process now. Valve springs, spring retainer. Make sure it's centered in the pocket. Now all you're going to do is repeat the process you did earlier. Tighten down that 10mm again. Now we're pushing the spring back down, the new spring, until you can get access to where the spring keepers are able to go in the two grooves. Well, 3 grooves, I guess, on these. What I like to do is you take a little bit, you can use assembly lube, you can use grease, anything. You want to be very careful with those keepers. I usually use a magnetic set of screwdrivers. Works really good. They have just the strongest amount of magnet on them. Hold that keeper in place. Be very careful not to drop these into your engine. So like that. You're gonna want to spin it just a hair so you can get your other one in. Now you're going to want to put your other keeper on. Like that. Now you're going to do the same process you've done multiple times. Loosen that 10mm. All the way up. Just like that. And now you're just going to repeat the process on all the rest of your valve springs. It's the same on the intake and exhaust side. On the intake and exhaust side, it's the identical process all the way through. If you've done one, you can do the rest of them. Just don't forget to pressurize each cylinder, and you're going to move your injector holder over each time. So we're going to do this whole bank, and then we're going to do this whole bank. And when we switch to another cylinder, we're going to move this tool over here. You're going to take the next spark plug out. You're going to move your hose over. You're going to pressurize that cylinder once you have your injector holder in as well. So these are 75-pound valve springs. They're going to allow that engine to really get up there in the RPM range, make the most amount of power the most efficiently without any issues. But as for the valve springs themselves, it's the same process for every single one. Now that we got the springs done, you're going to want to take your valve spring compression tool out of the engine, put your spark plugs back in, and now we're just going to go about putting the rockers back in, not latch adjusters. These rockers sit right on top of the latch adjusters and the valve itself. Pretty simple. Next thing we're going to start doing here, making sure all these are straight, and then we're going to I'm gonna show you how to throw the cams in, and they already got oil on them from before. If you're replacing the cams with new or upgraded or whatever, you would definitely want to lube them up, but these have a ton of oil just sitting in these galleys. Here's your intake cam. You can see there's a fuel pump lobe on here. So all you're gonna want to do is line up your pin right here with the pin on the actuator. That's pretty simple. Obviously this is going to want to go like right here. You just give it a little twist and a little bit of pressure. Eventually she'll find its home. There we go. There we go. For exhaust side, line up the pin. Now, it might take some time. You just gotta kind of find the sweet spot of everything. Make sure your rockers are still lined up. There we go. Once you apply a little bit of pressure, you can get it past the lobes. Then you just twist, give her a little push. There she went. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but way better than taking that front cover off. There we go. Now we're gonna throw our cam caps on. Now, like I said, this cam and everything is already very oily from when we took it out. We drove it in here, so has a ton of oil already on it. So we're not too worried about lubing these again. You're gonna wanna run down by hand at first. So then, we're gonna torque these things down. I'm just doing one side at a time to show you. We're gonna do 106 inch-pounds. Just like that. I like to go kind of on a diagonal to each other, then kind of work your way out. And then when you get done, I just like to go back through them quick. Make sure I got everything. All right. I like to take a little marker, go through here. I torqued all these. Just something you guys can do. You can look back at it and say, hey, before I put that cover on, did I torque that one? Or did I torque that one? You got a paint marker on. You torqued it. Beautiful. Same exact process for the other side. Nothing's different. Make sure your rockers are lined up. Make sure there's not one kicked off to the side or anything. Same exact process. Before you take that off, throw your bolts in just to kind of hold it. Just to hold those actuators so they don't, I don't see how they could pop out on you, but just so they don't. They're snug. That's all you need. Boom. Take your 10 mil out. Put that bolt back in your valve cover. Slide this out. If you just kind of pull up on it, it slides right out of there. There's your first part to being done. Tighten up these actuator bolts. We're gonna do 15 foot-pounds and 90 degrees. I would 100% recommending to get new actuator bolts on the end here. They are torque to yield, so they do stretch. So I would definitely recommend getting some new OEM actuator bolts. Do it just like you did to loosen them. Grab your 32 millimeter wrench or an adjustable wrench. We're gonna do our 15 foot-pounds first. Now, if you watched my other video on the 1.4 first generation, you gotta have a timing tool and you gotta lock your cams. It's good part about this engine. You don't got to do that. It's pinned. Don't got to worry about that as much with these. But you do still want to hold the cam, so you're not moving the timing. Now you still got your crank tool in, so nothing should move at this point, as long as you hold your cams. There's your 15 foot-pounds. I'll do the 90 degrees. Boom. 15 foot-pounds, 90 degrees. Mark it. All this up here, tight. Now as for when we go to put the valve cover bolt on, we're gonna jump down to the crank here, the crank sprocket, because we're gonna wanna release the tensioner. You're gonna wanna make sure always to do that when you do these, just so they are a ratcheting tensioner, just so if it did happen to move a little bit or ratchet to the next tooth, that we wanna release that due to the fact that we don't wanna stretch out this chain. The valve cover is gonna be 11 foot-pounds all across the valve cover bolts, and everything else is pretty much just tight. I mean, make sure it's hand tight and it's not gonna come undone. These are all, it wouldn't hurt to put a little bit of oil or lube on these O-rings when you put the injectors in. And another thing we're gonna wanna do, which I can show right before we put the valve cover in, is right here you can see that there was some RTV, and we're gonna wanna redo and always put RTV on those corners. It's the same with the older generation 1.4s too, where the front cover and the block meets. We're gonna wanna put RTV here and RTV here. You can see where there used to be some. So we're gonna wanna RTV that, but we'll skip down to and take your crank sprocket tool out. Pretty simple. There's a little hole that's part of this pin. All you're gonna wanna do is just push that down. Just push it down a little bit. So all that's doing in this car, the timing never ratcheted out or anything, but if it were to have ratcheted out on you, you just wanna double check that it's lined up, because this hole right here is a straight through hole. If you can get something in it, then you're good, like that. If you can get something in it, you're fine. If not, then it ratcheted out. But this one appears to be good. It's perfectly fine, so we can throw that bolt in for the tensioner. You throw that back in and go to installing our valve cover. And all you want to do is go tight, and you can kind of almost feel that crush washer crushing down. Just like that. Now it's time to throw this valve cover on. Please RTV these corners, just like my other video. Just stick a little RTV in each of these corners where the front cover meets the head. We see so many cars that everybody forgets that one little step after the valve cover, and then it leaks. And then you're doing a valve cover again and a gasket again, and especially on these cars when it's not the most fun job. There we go. I'm gonna be very careful not to roll that gasket. Just like that. It's right in there. Now for these valve cover bolts, just tighten them down, start in the middle, work your way out. These are going to be 11 foot-pounds. It's a little bit different than a lot of other GM Ecotec stuff or everything that you're used to. It's not 89, it's 11 foot-pounds. I don't know why they did it that way, but that's the way they did it. So the only other thing I'm going to show you guys, the rest of it is just putting it back the way you took it apart. Only other thing I'm going to show you is this vacuum pump. It's pretty simple. This slot here lines up with a slot on the end of the cam. Very simple process. You don't got to index it. You don't got to align it. It'll align itself. You don't got to put it at a certain point, like timing. It's super simple, literally. It should be, I mean, you took the cams out in the same spot, kind of, sort of. It should be pretty decent. This is pretty straight up and down. You could turn this by hand. That's straight up and down. It's just a vacuum pump, so no big deal. You might need to twist the pump a little bit. Yep. There we go. Just slides in. And then these bolts, we're gonna do 18 foot-pounds.
18 foot-pounds?
18 foot-pounds. Don't gotta worry about any angle with these girls. Perfect. That's it for me today, guys. The rest of it is just putting the car back together the way you took it apart. If you need to, look back at our video at the beginning part of it, and it can show you how to take everything apart. Don't forget, add coolant when you get done. Once you get all your pipes on for your turbo and your coolant hoses, don't forget to add coolant. Please leave comments or questions on what you guys would like to see next, what you guys would like to see us work on or do. And if you have any questions on doing valve springs or anything, maybe we can help, maybe we can answer some of those questions in the comments. This is it for now. Have fun with it. It's a long process, but it's easy enough. It just takes time. And if you got time and you got a little bit of knowledge and you watch this video, I think you can figure out how to do it. We make it pretty simple with our new timing kit. Grab our timing kit, grab our valve springs, and you'll have a lot of fun with this car. Go fast, not broke.